You're listening to the Valley Current.
Let's just talk for a minute about your career and arc of your career. You've stayed in the industry, but you've had a hard time, probably as most people do as they get older. The industry likes younger and younger talent. It's kind of the dirty secret, but I mean, it's just like law. It's very hard for a lawyer. I'm not that old, but I'm going to pretend I am, in their 70s to go get a job because they basically knock on a lot of doors and people look around like you're a liability. You're not an asset, even though you might have 50 years of wisdom or 40, which is usually about 30 more than most people do, and sometimes even 40 more than most people do. But the younger lawyers all believe, hey, you're an old fart. Get out of the way. You should be playing golf and, having 4 martini lunches. What are you doing here, right?
Well, when I started, I wasn't 18 yet. I started with a fake ID.
Wow.
And it was easy. There wasn't a computer to check.
You had a light table. You could align the dots. You were able to align the dots.
But I was 18 when they finally checked, so they kept me at Hewlett Packard. My career really started because of, I think I've told you this before. When I started, I worked on a production line, and I was doing something that made my hands hurt. It was Hewlett Packard, their mainframe computers, and at the time, there were no soft plastics yet. And so the piece that I was working on took 4 hours to make, and it was their number one field return. And it was making my wrists hurt. So I decided there has to be a better way to do this. So I came up with a way to do it. And so Bill Hewlett came to me and said that they were going to make a machine to do what I was doing. And he asked me what I wanted to learn. And I looked at all the people doing the Ruby Lith and all that. And I said, that's stuff over there. So it was like, and that's how I started, was because what happened was that the machine that they made, that part that took 4 hours to make, then ended up taking 2 minutes and never broke. So it dramatically, changed assembly practices. I'm really grateful for that opportunity to have changed, and learned something that has really, it's just like, to me, it's like being an artist, working with the physical design of a chip and all the bits and pieces of it. I'm just really grateful that some of the things that happened, because otherwise I would never have been in that environment, so I mean, it's quite challenging, now it's in, and it's just, that's what the Valley, that's what the industry is. It's become software and hardware.
Well, you could argue that meeting a person like the founders of Hewlett Packard, Bill Hewlett, and what was Packard's first name?
David
Packard. And, they were legends, and the company, of course, is still around. It's actually two companies now, HP Enterprise and HP Computers. The Enterprise is kind of the big iron and major services, and Computers is sort of the old compact portable computer company that still makes lots of laptops. It's two companies, really two different sets of shareholders. I think there's a lot of overlap because of the way they split it. But generally speaking, the company has not had the kind of success that Apple has had, even though people don't know that the founders of Apple had worked this summer at HP and learned a lot about manufacturing computers at HP. A lot of people just don't know that history. We know it because at my old law firm, we met those founders, namely, Jobs and Wozniak, and we started Apple Computer that's now $1.5 trillion or whatever number it is in today's market. It may be lower, but it's clearly one of the largest global enterprises on planet Earth. I don't know if you ended up doing a stint with them. You worked for HP for a while, but did you ever have a chance to join Apple and you didn't take it?
Well, no, actually, I worked with them before they started Apple.
Oh, is that right? Tell us about that. That's a good story.
Well, no, I mean, I was, I was just working away on, when they first got a digitizing machine. And so I was doing that. And, a few of the guys were in another area, and they, and when I was working on that, I think that was when Steve Wozniak and some of the others, went off with, and started Apple. So, but over the years, I've known of a lot of them, and so it's, the early people in Apple.
I mean, do you ever say to yourself with regret, I wish that I had taken what could have been a position over at that company? I would be a billionaire now, and I would be on the beach or on the golf course or having 4 martini lunches or anything like that?
No, I don't think that I was quite grown up enough yet to think like that. I think I was maybe 20, 21, maybe 21, maybe. So it was like, all I could think of was going to San Francisco, coming back and making it to work. So, and, the guys, after they started Apple, they did help me learn how to fix my car. They paid for the parts and I had to do the work. So, yeah.
They paid for the parts because they owed you money for the work that you did for them, right?
And no, they lined up against the wall, in the driveway, and they were all sitting out there drinking beers as it was hot. They paid for all the parts while I worked on the car. And then typical engineers, right? It was like I broke the screw off in the block. And so, it's when you get a group of engineers trying to fix something, it's a disaster. And,
no, you don't want people like engineers touching a car, because that requires a mechanic, not an engineer. The engineer will be like, well, let's take the whole thing apart and start over again because it's very badly designed. We can make it better. The mechanic is, if it ain't broke, we're not fixing it. We'll fix what's actually broke, and you'll be happily back on the road. By the way, you owe me $500 for the hour of my time I spent. I mean, that's a good example. Yeah. Let's wrap up the show, because I have another commitment here, and we'll do a second show, because I think this is really good foundation to what the focus of the show is like, which is, what is the magic, in your opinion, of Silicon Valley? Because you've had a great trajectory. You're still doing it. You're still inventing. You've met a lot of people. You know a lot of people. Some of them have become billionaires. Some of them have become millionaires. Some of them have gone broke. I mean, some of them are bankrupt. Some of them are healthy. A lot of them aren't.
Most are retired.
Lots are retired. Lots are still working. Lots are philanthropists. Yes. Silicon Valley is viewed as a special place. But what would you say if I said, what in your view is that magic of Silicon Valley? And do you think it's fading, or do you think it's actually still illuminating very well? I'm kind of curious where you come out on that.
I think it's changed. I think it's more becoming a social thing, where, it's how you network, and it's the social apps that you use, and it's that type of innovation. Some people are still trying to innovate software to build chips, and they're doing a good job in it. But the physical, actual environment is now 2 different worlds. So the innovation is becoming more like, like my kids using Snapchat. I don't know how to use Snapchat. So, it's that difference. I don't think Snapchat, they do. So, that's the type. So there's a big difference in innovation, the way it used to be and the way it is now.
Right. The innovation these days seems to happen more in front of a screen, wherever that screen is located, coffee shop, home, office, it doesn't really matter. The screen is almost always with you because it's a smartphone, but it can be a laptop, it could be an iPad. Soon it'll be a set of goggles or something that has an augmented reality set of glasses. Undoubtedly, that's going to occur. But I'm kind of curious with your remark, because I think you're saying the social environment that existed back in the day that you and I both remember, where people were in a room or in a
Yes.
garage
Personal
and
interaction.
interacting and like brainstorming. That's never going to work. Oh, that's going to work. They're joking. They're kind of doing a bit of
people would
stand-up.
get mad. You would see who had a temper tantrum, who didn't.
Right.
It wasn't like now where it's like it's like texting. You don't know the person's tone of voice when they're talking. You just know the words that they texted back and forth. So it's completely different. I equate how it used to be for many, many years versus the way people text now.
The texting though is causing a lot of problems because there's a lot of quality of communication that is lost. And even this video would be far different if we were both in the studio here in the office. We've actually built a studio, and you create two people in front of a camera together in the studio with the high quality recording equipment. You really get a lot more out of that conversation because people kind of lever off each other in ways that the video just mutes and muffles. And I think text is the same. Email is even worse, which is people don't really understand where is that person coming from and what are they really trying to communicate.
Yeah. So I think the big difference is the social interaction has changed. That is so there's a whole nother field, a whole nother era of innovation that's happening now versus, it's evolution, I guess. So,
I mean, do you think of it as you wish you were back in those good old days, or do you think of it as, hey, this is the evolution of man. Things happen faster now?
I just think it's evolution. I'm fine with it, because I remember when people didn't want to use computers, the people that were doing layout to build chips, they quit instead of having to learn how to use a computer. They wanted, things change.
I mean, there are definitely people out there lawyers. There are actually lawyers that still type in stuff themselves on a typewriter. I mean, there probably are lawyers too that actually still handwrite on yellow sheets. I mean, yellow pads are still sold. I mean, there's still a company that sells.
I got one. I do this thing.
And so the reality is,
I do that.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is there is an old way of doing things, and then there's a way that people adapt to. And the question is, how fast can you adapt, and how fast does the adaptation work? And it's kind of a good way to end this particular show, which is, do you think we're adapting, and do you think this pandemic that we're going through that forces us to stay at home is enabling us to adapt even faster? Because it's kind of like you adapt or you perish.
That's
if
right.
you don't adapt, you'll perish. It's just the way it goes, right?
That's right. There's a lot of people that have been against remote working for years and years, and now they're forced into doing it, and they're finding they have to adapt. You're exactly right. That is a form of change that's being forced, and people are adapting, and it's working out well.
Well, there are people that think it is working out well, and then there's some people, a minority, I would say, that think that we're really injuring the capability of people to understand each other very well. Like they say to themselves, people are so misunderstanding each other. They're getting so many things wrong. There's so much disagreement that is going to fester. And maybe there is some truth to that. I've heard people say there are going to be more divorces as couples being together. And it's a funny thing because there is this notion of, people get married and it's like, I didn't marry you to have lunch with you every day. I didn't marry you to see you 8 hours a day in your work environment. And I think a lot of couples are actually putting their home offices at opposite ends of their house. That's the way they think of it. They don't want to be, sort of, what is that? Familiarity breeds contempt.
Yes.
That old saying. So if you look at what's playing out today in Silicon Valley, do you think on the whole that it's evolving positively, or do you say well, it's evolving very differently, and I don't know if it's positive or negative. It's certainly very expensive to live here, right?
It's expensive, but I think that it's going to evolve in a positive way, but it's going to have some concessions. It's not where it's going to be 100% remote working. I think you have to have some interaction where you actually know the people. For some people that have done remote work, as a contractor for years, what the company has required is that they show up once a month, so that, every 2 months they come and stay for a week. So everybody gets some, they're part of the team. And so something similar to that effect will probably become a little bit more normal.
Well, I think we'll end on that note, because I do agree with you that we are seeing change, but how radical the change will be and how people actually make it work will be pretty important. I hope we could take this up maybe as soon as next month, if not sooner. We'll figure out the slots that work for you and that work for me. This is the Valley Current. I'm going to share my screen to show that we actually have a large number of podcasts, and we're actually getting some really good reviews. So we got the 5-star treatment on Apple, which is actually a rare thing to get. And I ask people to leave reviews because that's how people get to know us. But we'll publish your podcast here, and we'll get it out to various people, and you'll get it out to various people. And then the benefit is we'll try to bring them into the show. So I'm hoping that I can get Mike Clement, who I know is doing some interesting things, not in electronic design and automation anymore, and other people that were associated with virtual silicon technology as well.
Oh, okay. Well, I have a few that I would like you to, that might be willing to come forward, that were part of the group that I worked with when I first started. And, some of them, one went to Apple, and, then the other one went to Apple. Well,
maybe you'll give a list. Maybe you'll give me a list beyond the three of you that I think of as central to VST, which is Taylor Scanlon, CEO, Mike Clement, CTO, and then you were kind of like the all-purpose person getting things done. I don't know what COO, I guess, Chief Operating Officer.
No, I did layout, place and route, the architecture, standard cells. I did PLLs. I did pretty much a little bit of everything.
But I think you were also central to keeping the morale and the team together and bringing a positive vibe to all the people, and everyone there loved you. So you're an asset. You're an asset to any organization. And I'm sure if you decide to take a job with any of these places, I know you're doing independent inventing now. And sometimes once people do it, they just say, hey, I can't, it's art. You can't take me out of my art. I love what I do. Just, I want to do it in my own studio or in my own home, and I'm happy to do it. So we'll pick it up from there in the next. Do you want to make a parting remark here as we get to the end of our time?
I think that it's important for people to remember the history of this valley and how things have evolved, and that there is a relationship to what was to what is, and I hope that that's something that we can continue to talk about, is that evolution.
We will, and we'll pick it up with hopefully early next month. Thank you, Billie Riviera, for being on the show. Thank you for spending the time. We only got through about half of our topic list. We'll pick up the next list the next time. Stay as healthy and as safe as you are and you look. Don't jump off the Golden Gate Bridge that's in the background. You look great. You're doing the right thing, and you don't even look like you're older than 39 years old. So,
oh, thank you.
You're welcome. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Tune in next time on the Valley Current.